Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 Solo. I am Peter, and I am going to be talking about a movie. In this case, I am going to be discussing 8th Grade, which is a film from 2018. I'm still catching up on 2018 movies, and this was the latest one I watched. And I wanted to talk about it because it's an interesting film. It's directed by Bo Burnham, and it is set around a character named Kayla, who is in the 8th grade. She's almost done with the 8th grade. She's in her final week, so she's going off to high school after the summer. And it's essentially a movie about the awkward early teenage years, essentially. So I'll start spoiler free. I'll give you warning before I go into spoilers, but this is what we're going to do. So, yeah, 8th Grade is a movie that I liked the trailer of. I thought the trailer had style. I felt like it had like a really distinct character, the way it was presenting its scenes and things like that. And I'm happy to say that carried over to the movie. Because I'll start off kind of bold. I think this was fantastic. I actually think this was a really well done movie. It's exceptionally directed, and the shining achievement note is probably the performance from the lead actress, Elsie Fisher, who plays Kayla. You know, she's about 13, and she is delightfully awkward in all of the right ways. The fact that the movie starts with like she makes YouTube videos. She makes like or is it Instagram? I don't know, one of the social media. She does videos like a vlog, and she says, "Hey everyone," and she constantly says, and and I think that would be good, but and and it's something we all do a little bit of, but she's doing it a lot. She's clearly very nervous. She's struggling, and she's trying her best, though she cares about doing these videos, and it seems like she wants friends, because the first thing she asks is like, I don't get a lot of views on my videos. If you could share them, I'd really appreciate it. And it felt very kind of natural. And I think what's really impressive to me about this film is that, before I get to anything else, is that how natural it is, how authentic it feels about the experience of being this age. And what's wonderful is that obviously I was at this age a while ago, right? I was at this age in the early 2000s. Yes, I had to think about that there, in the early 2000s. And it's funny because at one point in the film, one of the older characters that we run into mentions that, it's so different that she didn't even have, like, like, when did you get Snapchat? He asks her, and she says, "Oh, like 5th grade." And he's like, "5th grade?" And he's like, "Man, we're old compared to you." And he's in high school, right? And I was laughing because early on in the film, like, one of the things that was sticking out to me is like, how much of a factor Instagram and like YouTube and Facebook are on like the ongoings and the hierarchy of the school world with the students, right? And how much of the ecosystem is dependent upon social media, which wasn't true when I was in school. MySpace kind of existed towards the end. YouTube existed just before the end, but it wasn't what it is today. But I think what's great about it is that there wasn't a fragment of my body that felt that anything that this movie was doing was not what I expected. In terms of what the world is like, in terms of how kids are today, with how they use social media, and it's just a tool now in how they always acted at that age. But she obsessively is watching Instagram videos and liking things. She's hoping for friends and followers because she doesn't really have a lot in real life, and it's kind of that, but it feels so authentic. The way she reacts to things, the way she gets nervous or tense, like I related a lot to her character, I think, and I was never as bad as she is as a kid, but I certainly relate to being kind of quiet and awkward and a bit of an introvert, right? I definitely have felt that in my life, and not so much that I was ever as nervous as she is, in the sense of like I fear making a fool of myself. I was just never someone who was good at the small talk and didn't really want to try. Where she clearly wants to and is just kind of mumbling, instead of really speaking out or being a part or getting involved or whatever. And kids are kind of awful, and some of them are awful to her, but like, it's so authentic. Like, that is the word that I want to use a lot when I'm talking about this. But it's also very tense. It's also a very anxiety-filled movie. I think the most impressive thing about the film, perhaps, just to kind of pivot away from what I also said was the most impressive thing about the film, is how anxious this movie made me. I tweeted as I was watching this that I was feeling more anxiety during this film than I ever did when I was actually about this age. I'm pretty sure I never felt this anxious at this age. I felt like so awkward for it. And it's kind of that thing where like, people talk about the comedy of The Office or something like that, where Like you're so like cringing at what Michael Scott's doing. This is almost kind of like that in some ways. Not as goofy, right? It's more down to earth, but it's kind of like that in some ways. But you're a lot more sympathetic to the character because she's not like an idiot like Michael Scott is. She's just young and naive and doesn't know how to be confident. And there's several moments that the movie builds up to a point. The direction is very smart where it'll like there'll be this like they'll have some music playing and it'll feel really stylized and it'll be building up to her walking in a room with other characters that she's nervous about, and you've got that feeling in the pit of your stomach where you're like, this is not going to go well. I'm so worried about how what she's going to go through here, and then she'll open the door and the music will just cut. It'll just go away. It will have to just be in the room with the audio that she's hearing, and it's the silence, it's the chatter of other people, and just the awkwardness of her being on her own in a group of people. Like, I relate to this so much in so many ways. And again, never been quite as bad as she is. She is like another level of nervous and shy and whatever. I never really classed me as shy in that way, but there was definitely some broad strokes that were really hitting home for me. I certainly wasn't a normal kid. I certainly wasn't one of the ones who was popular. Not that I ever really wanted to be. I never really saw the appeal or like strive to be that. But I was definitely not, and there was definitely beats of this character Kayla that was feeding into that. So yeah, direction is fantastic. It does this great job of using a lot of handhelds, a lot of close-ups, a lot of like we're in her world, and you know if she's seeing something, we're seeing it. If not, then we're not. Sometimes we'll be up close with her because it's intimate because we're with her in the scene. And I think that's the genius thing, just to get back to my point of feeling the anxiety, is that you're in her shoes the entire movie. She is our protagonist and we are in her shoes. And it's not in an annoying kid way, it feels like a real kid. And sometimes real kids can be annoying, and sometimes she's a little bit annoying, but it's never like movie kid annoying. It's authentic. You understand why she's acting this way, you understand why she feels this way, and you're kind of along for the ride. And there's the ups and the downs, and it's mostly downs. And that's not to say that it's not funny. There are funny elements. It's kind of like, I'd say it's a really anxiety-filled drama that has a lot of humour sprinkled throughout, because it's kind of true to life in that a lot of what she tries to do is funny in kind of a sad way, or some stuff's really funny of how the movie handles how it shows she's into a guy. Like it'll slow down, this like rock song will come in and she sees the boy she likes, and it's like, this is kind of funny. Like I'm laughing at how it's achieving this. But at its core, it's a really good character study. It's a good character study and a good character drama. I guess you could call it a coming of age movie. Although it's all set in 1 week, it's not like some big life lessons are learned. There's some basic, and I think that's also something I really appreciate about it, is that, like, obviously it's a movie, so by the end there has to be an arc and there has to be a conclusion of some kind. But it's not like, you know, like I was one of the things I could have been worried about as I was watching it and enjoying it was that at the end it might make too much of a big dramatic Hollywood point, like, oh, she's learned this thing, and you know all of a sudden she's this, you know, she's completely confident and everything's perfect now, and you know, obviously I'll talk in spoilers about what it actually goes, but it never feels like it betrays its authenticity. It never feels like it betrays who the character was at the start of the movie, or does something that feels unnatural to what a kid actually goes through. It was making me, and I won't get into this. This is personal memories, but it was making me reminisce about moments in my life around this time period where I maybe learned some things, or I maybe decide to treat things differently or react to things differently. Dare I say, when I became more cynical and stopped caring what people thought about me, which was a great weapon. You know, you stop giving a shit about what people think, and all of a sudden you're the most powerful person in the room. I joke, but you know, like, it was making me reminisce, and it's really authentic in that way. And there are some things that are unique to being a girl that obviously I didn't necessarily relate to, like with the specifics, but it didn't matter. Like one of the things I never get actually, especially from, you know, like, I just said, like, I just did what she does. But hey, like, again, see, it's one of those things, as well as like filler words you use to like patch in before you get to your next main point. But one of the things that, you know, like, I can relate to so many things, but one of the things that bothers me, that one of the complaints that people have, or mentalities that people have with movie characters, or even any character in anything, is this idea of that it has to be like, what's the best way of phrasing this? There's some people. I'm thinking people who hate diversity, right? Who argue that no. Like, where's my straight white dude, right? Where's my straight white dude so that I can relate to them? I've never understood that in my life. For me, as long as someone is sentient, as long as there is a being that is sentient, and I say that because like a robot can work with this. Any life form that is intelligent, you can sympathize with and empathize with, and you can relate to for the most part. You know, people say you can't relate to Superman, but what, he's a loner who's different from everyone else, who's worried that he doesn't fit in. Who doesn't relate to that exactly? Like, what? Who's not relating to these feelings? You focus on the superpowers, but the core human drama that's there is actually very down to earth, and at least often it is. Depends who's writing them, but that's the cores of the character, and it doesn't matter that this is a 12, 13-year-old girl. It doesn't matter that I was never a 12-year-old girl. It's just like all the feelings she's going through, I understand. Maybe I didn't feel them in the same situations as she did, but I felt a lot of them. And then there's other stuff where, okay, maybe I didn't have that specific situation, but it doesn't matter. I get it. I get that she feels scared. I get that she's embarrassed by her father. I get that she's worried that people don't like her. I get that all these different things. And I think this movie does a fantastic job of putting you in her shoes. And I think this is a movie that, there's scenes that are going to make you angry about how other people treat her. You're like, no, be more understanding. Especially when it's someone who's older and you're like, no, what are you doing? Like, she's clearly shy and insecure, like, be gentle about this. And you get frustrated at people for how she's treated, and it's actually a very emotionally investing movie, despite the fact that on its surface level, it's a light-hearted, like, 12-year-olds, 13-year-old, whatever her age is, trip through a week of school, essentially, and all of her hopes and fears as that's going on. And I would hope that this is the type of movie that I think people might be able to empathise with. Like, someone who was never this kid, someone who was the popular douchebag, or someone who was the confident kid, or whoever. Like, I hope this is the sort of movie where if they watch this, and a lot of them won't, this won't appeal to everyone because it's not a superhero movie or full of explosions, but I hope that people who are like that, who would watch something like this, will be like, oh man, I get it. Like, I get what this feels like. I get what this is to be someone like this. I get the feeling of fear in the room. Early on in the film, she's invited to a pool party by another kid's mum, who is only inviting her because Kayla's dad helped out with a fundraiser or something like that. And she's like, oh, we're having a pool party for so-and-so's birthday, you should come over. And the girl who's, the birthday is, she's sitting in the car like, oh God, no, don't invite her, she's awful. But, we're not saying that, but with her eyes. And Kayla's trying to talk herself out of it because she knows she doesn't want to be invited by the other kids. She knows she's not going to feel like it and be comfortable, but she gets talked into it. And, like, everything about this, like, the fear of going there, the awkwardness while she is there, there's several moments where your stomach just knots up, and I think it's handled extremely well. And the acting, like I say, she responds like an actual nervous kid. She feels like there's subtleties, there's stuff that isn't so subtle. It's almost like she's acting in a slightly different language, where the language is made up of ums and likes and ahs and mumbling, but it all translates into something. Like, she uses that, she has a new vocabulary of shy teenage girls speak, and she uses that to tell a story. As pretentious as that might sound, but she kind of is. It's kind of really neat. Obviously, she understands being a kid because she is a kid, but at the same time, like, is she this type of kid? Is she? I mean, she's an actress, so I imagine she is more confident naturally. I think you kind of have to be an actress to a point. But it's a stunning performance, and I think the direction is so tight. I think the script is also really tight. This was rated very, very highly, which is why I made a point of watching it. And it's good. It's a roller coaster. Like, I got more emotionally drained by this film than I did in most of the big budget stuff that I saw last year. Like, it has this gut punch of a kind of knot in your stomach almost the entire time, and you're kind of rooting for her to make it through. You're rooting for her to kind of survive, essentially, and you want her to make it through. And I think it's a phenomenal film. I highly recommend it. It's 8th grade. It's very good. It's a stunning, authentic little film, and it's only 90 minutes. It's brisk. It does not drag at all. It makes its points very well, and I don't think there was a misstep. I don't think there was anything that I thought that didn't work, or that shouldn't be how they handled that, or whatever. And there's some stuff in the back half where it really goes for the gut punch. And yeah, and I think the dad's an interesting character. He's a nice dad who's trying to do his best and try to be understanding, and he's cracking jokes, dumb dad jokes, and he's trying to be there and prop her up and make her feel confident. And it's just, and you really like him, I think, as a character. But you get like the frustration he has of trying to get this across to her, and it's almost like he knows that in 10 years none of this will probably matter. None of this, like, unless something really drastic happens, most of the stuff that happens in school you kind of leave behind. He knows that, so he's trying to prop her up. But it's the life and death to her. It's the classic teenage thing, but it's told from her perspective in a way that is vulnerable, and because of that, never comes across as tedious. It's just something we're into. So, and there was a sound effect there from Connor messaging me on something. So please ignore that. He's such a ginger menace. How dare he? So I'll give the spoiler warning for a bit, just so I can get into some of the interesting scenes. And Connor's messaged me again. How do I turn off notifications on Discord? He's been the worst. So yeah, I just installed Discord today, so I've not figured out how to figure it out. So anyway, yeah, so full spoilers for 8th grade. So some of the scenes that were sticking out to me. So like I say, I love the stuff about technology and how she has more technology than the high schoolers did, and of course they have more technology in social media than I ever did in school, and they point that out later on in the film. But one of the other things that I never did in school is at one point there's like a drill test for a school shooting, which I don't necessarily think schools where I grew up even do this today, but certainly this is a US thing specifically. And like, it's how the kids are treating it. Like, the kid she's into is kind of a douchebag, and he's just kind of like, if there was a shooting, I'd kick him in the nuts. I wouldn't sit under my desk like some sort of pussy. Like, he's being a douchebag, and like it broaches some interesting subjects in a really kind of funny way, where she hears from this other girl that the guy she liked dumped a girl because she wouldn't send him nudes, and she casually mentions, I almost deleted my dirty folder on Instagram, and he's like, wait, what? You've got dirty photos? What's this? And he's like really interested all of a sudden, and then he casually asks if she does blowjobs, and she kind of pauses, kind of awkwardly, and goes, and actually she gets interrupted by the school because the drill ends, but she ends up quickly saying before she sits back down, on that last question, yes, and I'm very good at them, and she runs off, and it leads to a scene later on that night on YouTube looking up how do you do a good blowjob. And it leads to one of the funniest scenes in the movie, where she goes down to the kitchen to get a banana, for obvious reasons. And her dad walks in, and there's nothing going on. She's just picking up a banana. And she kind of like freaks out and like stands up really rigid. And he's like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, nothing. And he's like, is that a banana? And at first I was like, why is he acting so weird about the banana? But then it makes sense, because he's like, I thought you didn't like bananas. And I'm like, oh, okay, suddenly this is way funnier. And she's like, well, that was before. Like, I like bananas now. And then she slowly peels the banana and tries to eat the banana, and she looks like so disgusted as she's eating the banana. But the whole thing's so funny because we know that she was going to practice giving it a blowjob, and it's just really funny that her dad walked in, and it's got this like, I keep using the word authentic, but it's the best word I can use to describe it. That's authentic, awkward teenage stuff where you're trying to look up stuff, or you're trying to like discover stuff, and your parent gets in the way, but you can't just tell your parent what you're doing because it will look bad and you feel embarrassed, and it has this authentic thing going for it. So it's really cool, and like it's got scenes like that. It's got scenes. She's at the birthday party. It's this pool party, and she there's one kid there who talks to her. There's one guy who's only there because he's the cousin of the birthday girl. So he's not been invited because he's a friend either. He's just invited out of obligation as well. And he's kind of a doof ball kind of thing. He's kind of like, let's do an underwater breathing test, and he's doing handstands, and he's being just inherently kind of an immature little shit. But not in a bad way. He's kind of nice though. He's talking to her. And even at this point in the film, I thought, okay, he's ultimately what she's going to end up being friends with, probably, because he's the one dude who didn't speak to her or treat her like she was invisible. He actually just spoke to her like in his own way, like normal. It's weird to us, sure, but it's in a 13-year-old boy's way. It was a normal, innocent way to speak to someone, and sure enough, by the end of the film, she has like she likes him on Instagram, and they follow each other back. And at the end of the film, after everything goes down, like they have this dinner date, like it's like a hangout session, but it's like a dinner date but with chicken nuggets. But they're really awkward, but they're both awkward. He talks too much, she talks too little, but they're kind of acknowledging that they're both kind of weird, and it's kind of delightful. It is what it is. But that's kind of the end of the movie, and that's kind of the happiest things get. And it's just this, she has this little speech at the end. She records a final video, and she's because at one point she gives up because she realizes that she's shit at giving advice because she's terrible at everything, which is true. But she records the final video. She's because earlier in the film they get this time capsule from the start of middle school, and it was like her at the start of middle school, like saying what she thought she would be at the end of middle school, and nothing matches up. She's like, "Oh, do I have a boyfriend? Am I this? Do I have a lot of friends? All these things," and she has none of these things. And she has this video to her at the end of, and this is not for school, it's just something she's chosen to do on her own. And she gives herself this time capsule for when she's finishing high school, saying, I don't know what you're going to be like. I don't know if you have a boyfriend, but if you don't, that's cool. Like she has this strength that she's got out of essentially going through some shitty things, and she's become kind of stronger for it, for the better. And obviously, I have to talk about the darkest scene in the film. Where there's a lot of gut punches in this film. There's a lot of turning of the tension. The build up to her walking out at the pool party, the build up to her walking up to certain people in certain situations. But so there's a thing in the middle of the movie where they have this day where they go to the high school they're going to after summer, and they have like a day with they get like assigned a high school senior, like a buddy who shows them around the building and stuff. We actually had this when I went to high school. We had this wasn't before we went, but it was like on the like the first week we'd have like a senior student like show us around, so we knew where everything was, that kind of thing. And so a similar thing, but this high school girl is really nice to her. This Olivia, she is really nice to her, and she's geeking out with her, and she clearly is a nice person. And it's kind of clear that obviously by the end of high school, some people have matured, and she's been really nice, and she recognizes that she's kind of shy, and she kind of brings her out of her shell a little bit. It's the most we see her interact with anyone, I think, throughout the whole movie, and in a sort of a passionate way where she seems like she's enjoying herself. And she's having this nice day, and they've exchanged like numbers or whatever, and she gives her a call, and she's like, I just wanted to thank you for being nice today, and I hope it's not weird that I'm calling. She's like, no, it's not weird at all. And she even invites her out. She's like, hey, me and some friends are going to the mall just to hang out. Do you want to come? And she nearly freaks out, and she drops the phone, and she's kind of pacing around for a couple of seconds, and then she finally says, yeah, that'd be cool. And she says it in a way that's like much more like nervous. She's like, yeah, that'd be like, yeah, some awesome, something like that. It's like fragmented words and putting things together. And there's a walk through the mall after her dad drops her off that's really tense for me, where the music's playing, and I'm like, oh my god, what's going to happen? This is going to be mortifying, whatever it is. And she sits down, and like the Olivia's there. She hugs her at first, and Olivia's like got three friends, one other girl and two guys. And they're all seniors in high school, and they're talking about various things, rumors that are being spread, whatever. And this is actually one of the things where, like, at this point in the movie, we're about 2/3 in, I'm expecting it to, like, okay, as much as I appreciate how down-to-earth this movie's been, but made, like, great drama out of it and how it's been shot and how it's been presented, so it's never felt like it's a mundane movie. It's always felt like the stakes are high, even though it's about, relatively mundane things, but they're a big deal to Kayla, so they're a big deal in the movie. I thought, okay, here's where it is to go bigger and, bolder, and it does do a big dark scene like in a minute, in a couple of scenes time, but this scene here, like when I thought it was going to get really, really bad, it did this really natural thing. And I've actually been in such a similar situation to an extent, not with older people, but I've been in a situation where I've been invited to something with another person's group of friends, and everyone else there knows each other, and you don't. Right, you're tagging along, and for some people this is not that much of a nightmare because you're just really chatty and you get along with everyone. But for someone like me who needs to know the people they're with and takes time to get to know people, it is a nightmare scenario because you're sitting there and you end up just kind of sitting there listening to their conversation. You don't tend to interact that much. It's a little bit different here, of course, because Kayla on top of this is very shy and tries to interact a little bit, but she just kind of mumbles and laughs, and over the course she looks sadder and sadder. And eventually, this is where the conversation turns on to how different they are in age groups, because one of the guys says, "Oh, be boring you, Kayla," and he starts kind of being a dick a little bit about it, and Olivia's like sticking up for her, and she's like, "No, I'm not bored, I'm not bored," and he's like, "No, it makes sense that she'd be bored. We're different generations," and Olivia's like, "No, we're not," and then he starts talking about technology and how she's had Snapchat since she was 5, and it's this really kind of weird, and it really makes her feel different. It makes her feel like she's not one of them, because she's of a different age group. Because, he's like, "Oh, they had Snapchat in 5th grade. Were they sending nudes to each other in 5th grade?" And then like the other girls like freaking out, like, "No, shut up! Don't talk about that in front of her." And it makes her feel like she's not one of them. It makes her feel like they're having to watch what they're saying because she's there, and it feels awkward in such a real way. So I mean, I never felt that part. I was never with older people or anything like that. But I've been in situations where you're kind of with a group of friends, and they're not your group of friends. You know one person there, and you feel like this extra dead weight, right? There's also a scene here where her dad's kind of like watching from across the food court, and she goes over and like gets rid of him, and he's she gets really upset and goes into a photo booth, and he kind of apologizes and leaves her money. And this is where the dad's really delightful, because he's clearly just concerned because he knows what she's like. He knows the type of person she is, and he's looking out for her, but he knows he's also overstepped his bounds. And he gives her like a $20 bill and says, "Hey, get a pretzel or something." And I'm like, how expensive are the pretzels these days? $20 bill, come on now. But he leaves, and she's like, "I'll get a ride home. Don't come and pick me up." And I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit worried about this. Again, I've got this bad feeling my entire time. So they're driving home, and it's one of the boys is driving, and Olivia's still in the other front seat, the passenger seat, and Kayla's in the back. And the guy's like, "Hey, I'll drop you here, Olivia, because you're first. You're nearer." And this is going to leave Kayla alone in the car with him. And Olivia, sensing that would be awkward for her, says, "No, we'll take her home first, and then you can take me back." And then Kayla, wanting to seem brave, like it's no big deal, says, "No, it's fine. Like it's fine. You can just go home." And Olivia's like, "You sure?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she really checks, and she's like, "Okay then, well, cool. Thanks for hanging out, blah blah blah," and she leaves. So we cut to a scene. She's still in the back seat, Kayla's still in the back seat, and this guy's in the front. And he's making small talk, and she's kind of responding well enough, and it's going as good as it possibly could be, with given how she is with people, right? She's going along. She does feel very kiddie in how she speaks, but it's going along well enough. And then he says, "This is kind of awkward with you sitting in the back and me in the front and talking." And obviously my brain says, "Oh yeah, he's saying, jump in the front so we can talk properly while I'm driving." Then he stops the car, and he gets in the back seat. And one of the genius things about this scene is how it's lit, is that he is so underlit you can barely see his face. He's practically a silhouette against the opposite window from where she's sitting. And he starts asking questions. He starts asking about how far she's been with a guy. He starts asking, various things. And she's kind of like pretending she's done more than she has. She's trying to appear cool. She's very nervous, of course. And this is, of course, the sickest you're feeling in the whole movie. Because you know, or at least you think you know where this is going. And he then says, "You want to play truth or dare?" And she's like, "Okay, sure." And he says there, and she's like, "I can't think of anything." He's like, "Well," she's like, you pick something then." He's like, "Okay, I'll take off my shirt." Is that weird? I'll take off my shirt. And he takes off his shirt. And he's sitting there topless with her. And then, he says truth or dare. And she picks truth again. But he's like, "Truth again? You're no fun." And she's like, "Okay, fine, I'll pick dare." Again, very nervous the whole time. And then he says, "I dare you to take your shirt off." And she's like, very, she's stuttering, she's mumbling, she's like, "No, I don't think so." And he tries to put his hand in and like start taking it off for her, and she kind of like, pulls away and says, "No, I don't feel comfortable doing that." And he gets kind of annoyed and just puts his shirt back on, and it cuts to them driving again, and she's still in the back seat, and already you're feeling sick. But I made that sound very quick. This scene feels like it goes on for an eternity while it's actually happening. It feels like every pause between every line feels like it's taking time to get to the next response. You're on the edge. You have this sick feeling. And you have this sick feeling because obviously, he's been a predatory creep. And then to add even more to this, possibly even sickening me more than the scene itself, is after the scene when they're still driving. He says back to her, because she actually starts mumbling, I'm sorry," which makes me feel sick because it's like, no, you shouldn't be apologizing for this. Like, no, this is not on you. This is where you start. I don't want to get into like societal things, but like you start feeling like mad about why she feels the need to apologize. And then he starts saying things like, "This was for you. I didn't want your first time to be with a guy at a party and then you'd suck and then he'd spend rumors about you. This was for you, and you're so ungrateful." And he says things like this, and she's apologizing, and she ends with saying, "Please don't tell Olivia about this," as if she's the one who should be ashamed. And I think one of the sort of the darker, sad things about the film is that there's no indication after this scene that she ever really tells anyone what actually happened. When she gets in the house. And it's a long walk back to that front door. When she gets in the house, she runs up the stairs crying. Her dad comes in and sees her, and the sound drowns out, and she's crying, and he tries to hug her, and it's like a really devastating scene. There's no, even though obviously something's happened she's upset about, you never get the indication that she actually told him what really happened, or the sort of situation that she was in. You don't get the indication that she ever even spoke to Olivia again, never mind tell her what actually happened. Because, I mean, everything we see from Olivia would imply that if she told her this, Olivia would act, appropriately in response. She would respond and confront him about it, would probably tell other people who needs to be told. She would, or at least with Kayla's consent would, like, you feel like she would respond appropriately and be on Kayla's side here, but she feels scared. She thinks she's done something wrong by not, and you feel sick in your stomach. And I think the beautiful thing about this is that this movie, I mean, is that it puts you in her shoes the whole time, and so much of what she goes through is relatable no matter who you are. But this event right here specifically is so specific to her gender. And I think it doesn't matter who you are, you feel it in your stomach. You feel the predatory, you feel like the actions of this other person. All of a sudden, this random teenager feels like the most sinister asshole you've ever seen in a movie. He feels terrifying because Kayla feels helpless in that scene. It is soul-crushing. The way she has to react afterwards, the way she apologizes and thinks she's done something wrong is soul-crushing. Everything about it is devastating. And it is, like I say, it's the darkest time in the film, and it's definitely the big climactic thing that gets us into the final swing of the movie, but it's such, again, an equally kind of realistic, normal occurring thing. It's really creepy. It's just I can't, the words don't do it justice. The feelings that go through your mind, and more importantly, the pit of your stomach as you're watching that scene. And like she actually gets her after this. She pulls out of her the time capsule from before, and before when she looked inside it, there was like a little SpongeBob SquarePants, but it turns out that was a USB stick, and she puts the USB stick in her laptop and watches the video on it, and it's the video that I was mentioning where she says what she was going to be at the end of middle school, and she asks her dad if she can burn something in the backyard, and they go out together, and he doesn't understand what they're doing. But he's like, yeah, sure. And he's been very understanding, and he makes a little fire, and they're sitting there, and he's like, what's in there? And she throws it on the fire, and it doesn't matter. And he's like, well, as long as this was like a good thing, this was a healthy thing to do. But she asks him, like, does being my father make you sad? And he's like, no, why would you think that? Like, being your father makes me so happy. And she's like, well, I was thinking if I had a daughter someday and she was like me, I'd probably be really sad. And he gives her this great speech about how she makes him feel. And one of the things that stuck out to me in this speech, actually, is it's the only time in the whole film where the mother is mentioned. Because I was thinking early on that maybe the mother being absent was going to be a big thing or a big theme for the film. And I think arguably, yeah, you could theorize if you want that part of the way she is because her mother like abandoned them when she was born. It's we don't get an exact timeline, but it sounds like she was still a baby when the mother left. And he he says the only mention of her the entire film is the one line of dialogue where he says, "When your mother left, I was terrified at first." Well, that is the only line where the mother is ever mentioned, and I thought that was very notable. That maybe it is this unspoken thing where they never really speak about her, and him to actually mention her was a big deal. So like that really hurt. And she makes this final video, but before she does that, there's a scene where they're graduating middle school, which they're all in their gowns and whatnot, which is weird to me because I never had graduations for anything other than high school or university, but they're all lined up, and she sees the boys she liked from earlier on in the film walking past, and she steps out of line and she follows him, and you think she's going to go and talk to him, and part of you's kind of like, really, he has a douchebag, like he clearly is a complete dickhead, she shouldn't be talking to him. But there's a great swerve in this scene where she just pivots 90 degrees, and what she was actually doing was walking up to the girl from the start of the movie, the girl who had the pool party, who's been kind of nasty to her and just kind of dismissive of her. And she basically just tells her what she thinks of her. She says, "Hey, it was kind of rude that you never appreciated that birthday gift I got you, the card game, which they scoffed their eyes at and were like, this is lame," kind of thing. So I wrote you a thank you note for being at that party, and you never said anything nice to me. When people are nice, you should be nice. And what I love about this little speech and the actress performance here specifically is that it feels like it's still of her character, of her dialect, of all the little noises and words that she's been using the whole film, but it's up a level. Like, she still says and 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 ah, and she still says and all these other things. She still says all those things, but she said it a lot closer to the way that most adults use them, the way that I'm using them right now every so often because I'm filling in gaps in my speech, and I do it without thinking about it. She has a point to make. It's also the loudest she ever gets in the movie, because she has something to say and she's not afraid who hears it. For the first time, she's not whispering or mumbling, and it's kind of like empowering, and you never really get much of a reaction. Like, she turns around, starts walking back to her place without ever really seeing much of the reaction afterwards, and it's just like, yeah. And then the movie ends with her making another video for her high school self, and it's just kind of, it's like, I don't know who you're going to be, but whoever it is, that's okay. There's this kind of sweet message at the end of it. So it is coming of age. It is about being that age. It is about being a girl at that age. It's about being all these things, and you'll directly relate to some of it. You'll directly relate to all of it, but you'll empathize with everything, and you'll be along with her for the ride. This is a fantastic piece of filmmaking that makes you in the character's shoes, and I can't recommend it enough. I thought it was fantastic. So by all means, check it out. And Bo Burnham, who wrote and directed this, I will be on the lookout for him. I'd heard his name before. He was in The Big Sick. He didn't write or direct or anything like that, The Big Sick, which is also a great film. But he was in that as a cameo. He was a comedian, I think. I think Tim told me about him. But he wrote and directed this, and it's fantastic. This is his first feature-length movie, and it's great. And yeah, so there you go. That's 8th grade. That's great. Check it out. Full of great scenes. There's scenes that I've not talked about. She gets confident a little bit at one point and volunteers for karaoke, and it seems like things might have went okay, but there's just lots of standout scenes in this. Funny scenes, heartbreaking scenes, tense scenes, the whole shebang. And it's just taking the subject and making it into an engrossing character study. So I recommend it. But yeah, that's 8th grade. So yeah, by all means, if you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Actually, you know what? That Twitter in the corner is wrong of the screen. It's not mailed_fuzz TV. It's just mailed_fuzz. That is a mistake. I'm going to have to fix that. Oh dear. Is that like that in all of them? Oh no, I'm going to have to check that. Oh dear. What an embarrassing moment this has turned out to be. I could probably just like black out the TV. Admittedly, I probably even have to change that much. I just have to mask the TV part out. But that is me. So thank you very much for for watching or listening. Get us on Patreon at patreon.com/mailfuzztv. That one is correct. You can get us over there and support us for as little as $1 per month. But that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. I don't really have a good outro line for the movie stuff yet, but it's fine. Do you know what's annoying is she had an outro line in the movie for all her videos, and I can't remember what it is. Because she does this thing where she goes like that and she says a thing, and I can't remember it. Damn it. Anyway, that's me. Thank you once again, guys. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.